the barrels for, well, definitely for storage. Needs to be done at least once a year. But I'm also, depending on the weather, hoping to do a beer brew, an outdoor beer brew this week or next week. So I am waterlogging the one. I'm already sterilizing the other, and it won't be a complete sterilization because it's wood and I can only surface clean. But since most of the dust and dirt that was on it was surface, I kind of feel better if I at least star sand it once a year. The other one hasn't been used for brewing yet. The idea was that the one with the handles would be the one for the filter. That's why there's a stick in. It's got a hole in the bottom. And then the other one as the fermenting, the gelvat, or the fermenting barrel. But the events that I go to tend to be only a one-day demo. And that fermenting fat is not transportable once it's got wort in that is fermenting. So we have, for now, we've only done plastic buckets because they are movable. And one time we did a 5-gallon barrel, which worked well. So since this one hasn't been used yet, it's actually taking a little longer to waterlog. And there was quite some water, as you can see, there's water coming down here. So I know it's not waterproof yet. I also know because the level of water is going down. So I'll just keep adding water to it until it is. And another thing to, oh, there's so much bigger leak. There you go, you can see. So since we're planning on doing a bonfire tonight, I'll log these and then we'll drag them down to the bonfire. And then I'll fill them again with water and we'll start putting hot rocks in. Because warm water also helps. Well, there is a lot of intrigue. Warm water also helps to waterlog them better. And it's just fun playing with them, even if it's not for a brew. So that's the first step in getting these ready for an outdoor brew. So for the juniper in my brew, I'm using the Virginia juniper, Juniperus virginianus, because that is what I have growing in my backyard, and I have real big nice ones. The traditional juniper for brewing is the common juniper, or Juniperus communis. I don't have that, and I don't really know where it grows either. The difference is that the leaves are slightly different. This is more like a conifer, and the common juniper looks more like pine needles, except all the way around. So they're very, very pokey, very spiky. It's like a porcupine tree, which makes it very, very useful as a filter because it really velcros together. This stuff doesn't work too badly either. I've filtered with it successfully many times. It also has the similar flavor profile. It will also have little juniper berries. And one of the reasons that I chose to start brewing with this was when I found that when the immigrants came over to America and they wanted to use the common juniper to flavor their gin with and didn't find it, they started using this to brew with as well. So I'm stepping in my forefathers' footsteps by using what I have here in my traditional brew. The fire is going well. I just added some more wood. I've got a 5-gallon bucket of juniper sprigs. So now it's time to get the tripod and start my cleaning water boil. So I've started my juniper infusion. I added fresh sprigs of juniper to my water, which I'm heating up. And once this boils and boils well and gets dark like a tea, then I will use that to clean my wooden barrel with. I'm using one wooden barrel in this system. I'm using it's both the mesh heat making the mash, extracting all the sugars, but I'm also using it as the filter. So there's no separate, there's no boiling step in this stage either. I'm just using stones. And I'm going to back up because this is actually already getting quite hot. Okay, so let's start preparing the barrel. And I'll show you a couple of things that I did to make working with these big barrels easier. One, I gave it ears. A very medieval thing to do. And it doesn't just make handling the barrel easier, it also helps prevent it from getting bent out of shape during maneuvering. So when I want to lift this, I'm not going to go around this and press the staves in. What I do is I'll get a stick, run it through, and I can lift the two people. It's really easy. You can lift the whole thing up with spent grain and everything. Another thing that I find really easy to use is this stand. It's 2 pieces of wood with a mortise in the middle and 4 sticks. They're literally just sticks. There is a plug, a hole in the bottom. But it's not in the middle, it's off to the side, so it drains in between one of these quadrants. And I have a plugging stick. As you can hear, plugs the hole well. I was going to use a nice fresh juniper, but it's not waterlogging well, so it kept leaking. And this old thing, it just works really well. So I'm like, oh well, I guess that's what it's gonna be. I already waterlogged the barrel a couple of days ago, so it's at least a 1-day process, depending on how often it's been used. So it's already really heavy, it's sturdy, everything's swollen, so I shouldn't be losing any of my stuff. So now it's time to add that to the barrel. If I'd had a bigger barrel, I would actually, or not bigger barrel, if I had a bigger kettle, I would infuse it for longer, but I don't. So I want to do 2 or 3 of those amounts and stick them in and really swish them around. The juniper gets stronger. Ooh, it really smells good. The longer it is boiled, and obviously the stronger it is, the better properties it has. We're waiting for the second batch of juniper water to boil, and we're getting real close. And then is my second rinse. Oh, it's getting a little hot. Second rinse of the mash tun, and then I'll start laying in the filter. And then I need 1 more batch of boiling water to put on top of the filter to sterilize the greens, the juniper, because we're doing a raw ale. We're not actually going to boil the wort. Ah, see, it's starting to boil. I knew we were getting close. Yep, so I need to go back to action. See you later. The juniper water just came to a boil, So we're adding it. Add it in here, do a second good quick rinse. Make sure to get all the walls wet. Ah, it smells so good. There we go. Now we'll add the juniper that I picked earlier. We'll check to see if there's no bugs or bird dews or whatever you have it on it. Make a nice filter bed, especially tight around the spigot, of course. So that was about 5 gallons. And then I'm adding my filter stones. There's a bit of a, how did they fit again? So, another reason why we need to do another rinse. Well, maybe it works better. Yeah, that's how it was. To clean the stones as well. So, and the bed of stones gives us a good hard surface to start mixing later on, because we don't want to disturb the filter bed too much. That would not be good. Okay, gonna be putting some water back up. Okay, last bunch. Whoa, that was a little too enthusiastic. And that should have sterilized everything pretty much. Actually, I'll just keep that in. So, the next step is the most important step, is the adding of the grist. So now we're going to add the mold, the grist, ground up malted grains. And I have a combination of oats and barley, and I got this. It's very variegated in color and in texture, because these are all samples from the homebrew GOM of 2019, and apparently it pays to go to the expo hall right around closing, because someone gave me a whole box of samples that they were not going to keep, not going to want to bring back. So, I'm doing a whole brew of, I have no clue what kind of grains. Well, I do, but it'll be hard to emulate. I did go for the more smoked version. So I've got smoked cherry and midnight wheat and some of the darker colors. And some really pale ones. So it's a medley. So I'll put some in. And then the next step is to add some more water, and I'm going to do that alternatively. So to show you better, I'll be readjusting the camera. So I'll be adding water and grain alternatively, because I don't want to over water my mash, but I don't want the grains not to be very well wetted either. So Adding it in layers helps to prevent clumping. I'm doing 20 pounds of total grains. We've done twice 24 pounds. Of course, this barrel can take quite a bit more. But once we start adding the rocks, you'll also find that the rocks take up quite a lot of space. And we don't really want it to overflow either. So I made a juniper mesh stirring stick. Sorry, that was Dutch. Make sure it's all in there. And now I'm immediately like, oh, that's such a good idea, putting rocks at the bottom. What a huge difference that makes. We'll have to soak up for a bit and then I'll start adding the rocks. So one of the reasons I think this worked, I mean the big reason I think this works as a good plausible technique for Viking brewing is that this is a very large volume vat, and barreling coopering allows for large volume. Of course, metal kettles can do that too, but by that time metal kettles were expensive and it would be very unlikely that every homestead had one. That's why I'm heating in the little one, because that's a cooking vessel, and that they should have had, most of them, because a lot of people were cooking in ceramic pots as well. But it looks like the Nordic people didn't have as much access to ceramics as I'm used to in the Western European. So we do know that they were doing something with rocks, because there have been huge amounts of finds of heat cracked rocks that are then used as foundations for new farms. So we know that they were doing something with it. And cooking and brewing seems to be a likely option. So we're already getting a little bit of protein foaming. The liquor is actually already starting to brown up. It went in as water and it's already starting to brown. So I'm getting malting going. Yeah. And like I said, the next step will be adding some rocks, which of course is the best step. So I put some water up for sparging, but that's not going to be until at least an hour and a half, 2 hours from now. So I'll just probably raise it up a bit, but also the fire will start to get a lot less because I'll be pulling it apart to get the rocks out. So I've got about a 5-gallon bucket, maybe 1.5 bucket of volume of granite rocks in there. You want to use rocks that don't explode. It doesn't harm the beer, but it can harm you. And the sandstone and slate, if it doesn't get slowly heated up, it can explode on you, and you can have shards all around your fire, which is not good for us. So use granite. And I did find, I've used granite and marble, that they do break over time. But they don't explode, they crumble, and they don't like immediately fall apart when you put them in the fire. They slowly crack in the mesh. So I just go in with my fingers and take all the cracked pieces out, and I collect them and I use them as ornamental gravel in our garden. Actually works real nice. And that also explains why there are foundations of cracked rocks meters deep under very old Viking-era Scandinavian homesteads, because they had the same thing. And I did hear that sandstone and slate, they do have it, but granite is a lot more abundant than in my area. I have to really look for it. We are in a glacier area. This is the upstate New York, so the Finger Lakes, but it means that they're scattered around. So I've got to go to creeks and look for the nice ones. So I'm debating whether or not I'll do one more fire or if I'm just going to use it as is. I added some rocks after the first fire. I did find that it takes a while to heat up the rocks correctly. So it's not like, oh, you heat them up with one fire, the fire dies down and you put them in. It works better if they are at the center, and that's why I made that stone pyramid at the beginning. But I had more rocks I saw later, so I added them around the edges. And we'll probably find that the ones that I just tossed into the fire will be a lot less hot than the ones that were at the center of the fire when we started everything. And heating the rocks at the center of the fire is a trick that I found in Lars Marius' book. I think it was Eastern European, Russian, in that region, where they were doing the stone brew, and that's how they heated up the stones. And I thought, oh, that's really smart. I'm going to do that too. The mesh ended up absorbing most of the liquid, so I added the other kettle of hot water as well. It's one thing that I learned from previous brews too, doing this, that always have a kettle on the water. You don't know when you need it. Because of adding the hot stones, we do want this to be a slurry, not a porridge. So there is something for the stones to sink into. So one of the things that the Cornwall Festival brewers warned for was to use fairly coarsely grounded malt, so there isn't a lot of flour and dust that goes into the mesh. The filter we're using, the Juniper, it's not very fine, and all those fine particulates, they will go through, and that is something that we will be dealing with by draining some off and putting it back on top to catch the first fine particulates until the filter clogs up in a way, settles down, filters more, filters better. Another thing that I've seen in traditional brewing accounts is to make a collar of dead grass around the plug, so the dead grass also acts as a filter. And I haven't tried that yet. That is, I've always used the Juniper, but if you want to do this and you don't have Juniper and you do need something to filter, the next best thing would be, or the other best thing would be, to use straw or long dried grass and tie it around like a witch's broom and have it splay out at the bottom. So this is the last burn for stones. Get them all nice and hot. They are in a beautiful bed of coals. It's nice and glowy red in there. So hopefully the stones on the inside will be glowing red as well. Now that is the goal, to get the stones glowing red. Doesn't happen as much with the ones at the edge, but we can always fish them back out and stick hotter ones back in. Now, one of the cool things about using stones is that because of the intense heat, when they sizzle and go into the wort, they will create caramelization. So unlike the caramelization of a long boil in a copper kettle, the stone brewing gets it on the surface of the stones. And I think that's pretty cool. And I don't have to worry too much about getting ashes and all that in there, because that is supposed to be filtered out through the filter bed. And it's sterile. It's mesmerizing to look at it too. At night you can actually see the stones glow red hot. During the day, not so much. No, and I'm only seeing the big ones. I'm not seeing any ones in there, which is good, because that means that they're all covered. You know the fire is good and hot when the wet wood that is sitting at the edge to dry out is catching fire and smoking. So I just pulled the last bits over the stones, and once this has died down, then I will start pulling rocks, or maybe even a little sooner. Right now I'm standing about 1.5 meters away from the fire because it's too hot for my camera. I don't want to. I think I might have burned the coating off of my first one, so I'm being a little more careful with this one. It is hot, and I'm using a lot of pine, so it's a quick burn but hot, as I like it. So first I'll show you close up on pulling a bunch of these rocks out. Oh, this is a little gross. Ouch. And I'm using blacksmith tongs. I got these second hand. They're old and they work very well, and also the historic information shows very similar wooden and metal tongs being used for this kind of brewing. And I need to grab one quick because I am burning. Ouch, ouch, ouch. And we did well. The first one is in, and it's already bubbling and boiling away, and it's making foam. So I'm gonna grab a couple of more. I was already getting a little bit of a scent, but just adding these 3 rocks, I'm definitely starting to smell the malt now. So the bigger the rocks, the longer they'll be hot. Smaller rocks cool down quicker, but they're easy to maneuver around. So I'm going to grab my stirring stick and start stirring. Because we want everything to warm up. And what I'm waiting for is for it to warm up to about 160, 170 and get protein break, which we'll recognize by a lot of foam. So we've got a little bit here already. And once we have that, I will keep adding rocks occasionally to keep it hot, but not too hot, to get the enzyme conversion and get all the sugars out. because I want them in my liquor, not in my grain. Because anything that stays in the grain only benefits my animals. Okay, I'm gonna go grab a few more. The mash was at about 150. So I added a whole bunch more stones, but I'm also, as you see, I'm running out of liquor. So I'm heating up a little bit more water to add to it. The steaming and evaporation using the stone method is quite significant. And I'll add a whole bunch more. Yeah, this gives a little bit more room to add rocks. But we're still not quite high enough yet. Another couple 20 degrees. And I might have to start taking some rocks out to make room. So I don't like to do that because see if we can find some. See, they're covered in grain, and I don't want to lose the grain. Another reason why I added some more liquor, because now I have something to rinse with. Okay, witch's cauldron. Whistle. Mouse. Mouse. So it's about lunchtime now. So I've got some sausage and bread, which I thought was pretty fitting. And I've got the one person at home with me to brew. Unfortunately, he is too busy looking at all the critters around. And it is customary, of course, to drink while you brew. But I don't normally drink during the day, so I have something else that I brewed. It's very mulled Viking sparkling soda. Yeah, okay, we've got some room to pour it out. Prost! Alright, skål! That's blackcurrant lemonade. That's good. So the bubbles are starting to get like thick, and the liquor has really turned a dark color brown. So it is time to start lautering and sparging, and I will also run through a couple of like a gallon or two, put it back on top and recirculate. I was going to recirculate more, but I was waiting for the battery to load back up, and then I realized that this is actually getting to the end. Because of all the little stones, I had a pretty good water and temperature distribution. I had a pretty good heat distribution. And with the stirring stick, I stirred it around pretty well too. Keep it all mixed up. So now I'll draw some out through the bottom and see what I find. It looks like coffee. It is beautiful. And I'll put this back on top. So I'll be drawing out a little bit more wort to start my yeast starter. It's a kwijk that is a combination of 3 different house yeasts. I don't remember off the top of my head which ones, but I'm sure I'll find out. and add it to the video. So I'm very slowly draining it out. Also, this cools it down a bit because we want it to go to like 30 degrees Celsius or about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. So that should be about enough. And I'll put that to my glass bowl, which I have over here. Cool it down. And then I'll add the kvike. As expected, the cool down went real quick. So this is about a nice temperature, maybe a little too hot even. This is the kvike that I have from the escarpment laboratories. I got this also at HomebrewCon. I've used it before. It's actually very nice. And I've been told that under pitching is better than over pitching, so I'm only using one bag. And there we go. And it should take a couple of hours for the wort to slowly go through, and I might even run it through like twice or 3 times depending on how clear it comes out. So by dinner this should be bubbly and ready to pitch. Last time it didn't, so I pitched it anyway, and it didn't seem to have made any difference. The next day it was bubbling away like crazy. It might have been a little too cool, because I'm not used to brewing with kvike. I'm used to brewing with regular beer and wine yeast, which goes a little cooler. So the Borg myrtle I used, or sweet gill as it is called in American, I got from the Adirondack. It grows abundantly, so this is from a parking lot of a trail. It's not the best quality. It should have been bright green, not as green as yellow, but that's because I just picked it and it's already October. I do have some catkin type things, but those are the male ones and I want the female. But this is what I had, so this is what we'll make do with. Bog myrtle is pretty strong and it's got a bit of an unusual taste, so don't overdo it. I think I used like 2 grams a gallon or something. So this time I had a pinch and put that in with my hops. I used a handful of hops out of the freezer. It's probably Cascade, I'm not quite sure. Someone traded it with me and I was growing it ornamentally for the longest time. And I've brewed with it before and it's actually pretty nice. So partial hops, partial bog myrtle, right over there. I just parched with the first amount of hot water. What's kind of cool is that I'm getting all these really beautiful little bubbles. Rainbow colors, which might be from the oil that is the coating of the pan. I don't know, maybe it's from the mold, but it's very beautiful. Got blue and purple and green and yellow, all the colors from the rainbow. I put my wool klappenrock over the edge to keep the bugs out a little bit, and as you can see I'm getting quite a bit of wort. So when I go back up to the house, I'm going to get a rope so I can tie the bag into the wort. Having it under the spigot doesn't really work. It's just a hole in the bottom and it splatters everywhere. There's no determined downpour. It had it just right for a little while, but then it shifted. It's very dark. Looks a lot like coffee. So I guess I brewed stout, which is not unusual, of unexpected, because I used midnight malt and smoked malt and some other dark malts. But I like that. And we'll just keep draining. Draining and sparging until there's no more sweetness coming out. So we've been draining for about an hour now. I've been keeping a piece of wool, actually my klappenrock, in front of it to keep the flies off, because suddenly it started smelling nice and I was having visits of flies and bees. And I don't mind the bees, but I do mind the flies. I've got about 2 gallons out, I think. And it's slowly draining. I sparged twice with one kettle of hot water. And I think that's it. The top is starting to look fairly bleak, fairly pale. So now it's just a matter of getting the rest out and waiting for the quake to start. It's dehydrating, but it hasn't started bubbling yet. And I'm keeping the quake starter warm, the Mariella, or Mariella, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. That's the Hornindal name for the yeast starter. And I thought it was kind of nice that it had a girl's name, the Mariella.